On this edition of Native Report, we look at the life and art of Joe Geshick.
This Caricieri issue.
We learn about the Kajira Decision.
Affected us in ways that we couldn't have imagined.
And we continue with Part 5 of Barrow Whalers of the North. We also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee Wakatan Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. Joe Geshick's paintings reflect his mastery of Renaissance techniques that express and explore his traditional Ojibwe spirituality. Sadly, Joe passed away in 2009, but he left us with many gifts, and his spirit lives on.
On this spring morning, Leanne Geshick reminisces about the life and art of her husband Joe as she looks through his sketches in their shared studio.
I miss him. I miss him being physical in the world. I feel that his gift, he gave us a huge gift by leaving these paintings for all of us to learn from and experience. I made a commitment to him, and there's others who are also committed in helping to keep this art so that people can see it and learn from it. The story that he left is one that can help a lot of people and help our earth. And it's very profound work.
Leanne is preparing for Journeys, an exhibit of Joe's artwork at the Edge Center for the Arts in Big Fork, Minnesota.
Joe described his style of art as semi-abstract realism. And so there are elements that are more symbolic, and then there are elements that are more realistic. And this painting combines a lot of those, that style. I'm really grateful to the people that have been involved putting this show together, Steve Primo and Karen Furlock and another friend, Joan Lester. And we're going to be having his paintings. There are 3 collectors, and the major collectors, and also a few other collectors that have agreed to lend their paintings for the show. Most of these paintings haven't been seen in public before because they've been in private collection, and we're going to be bringing all these paintings together.
The name of the show is Journeys. We met and tossed around several titles, and I wanted the word journey in there because I really felt that the art we were selecting would reflect Joe's journey, his many journeys. And so that's how we came up with the title. The painting, Feeding of the Spirit, I got a little selfish about that. I chose that because it's actually the first painting I ever saw on a book cover.
Joe's early years were marked by adversity, and it is because of this he found his passion, painting.
It was kind of hard. Our mother, we lived in that lake with our mother only. And of course we went to grade school up there. Joey went to grade school up there, and he got into his art a little bit up there, you know, in grade school. He got to do some art, a little bit of art, different things. We moved to Eveleth, and then from there to Duluth. And that's where Joe got high school or whatever, grade school, high school. And then he had a little problem.
He got in trouble, and he was put in St. Cloud and then eventually landed in Stillwater Prison. And he started painting in prison. They would go through the trash cans and take the watercolor paints that people had thrown away. And he had a friend whose name was Kenny that helped him learn more about painting. And he continued to do that. His mom would use some of her monies and buy him paints and brushes and help him that way. And that is eventually what was his ticket to freedom. He painted his way out of prison, basically.
He was soon being noticed for his artwork, winning several awards and being commissioned to paint. He also began another journey, this time along a spiritual path.
He met a medicine person. That's after he got out of incarceration. He was in St. Paul, like Leanne said, and he went to, he went to Lac La Croix. That was before Leanne, and then up there he got into his culture up there. There was our cousin Ron Geshick, medicine person, and there was Ron's dad, Bob Geshick, and Ron's uncle, Henry Geshick. They're all medicine people at the time up there. They're all passed now.
One thing that Joe's paintings communicate is a deep respect for life, and he developed his own unique style. He uses certain elements in his paintings quite frequently. He uses the circle, which represents the Creator or God. He uses the zigzaggy line, he called it, his wavy line, and that's the communication line. It represents the stories and songs and ceremonies.
I like his clean lines. I like the colors he uses in particular and the way he blends them. I like the fact that you are drawn to them in a spiritual sort of way. You can sit and look at one and think about what's going on in that painting and how it refers to your life. I had just gone through quite a bit of loss myself when I first saw Feeding the Spirit. And it brought me a great deal of peace and comfort.
The images in Joe's artwork, aren't so much a self-portrait of himself, but the experiences are his self-portrait, of what he experienced, what he was grateful for. He really appreciated the native way of life, and he really had a deep respect for that way of life. His paintings are alive, and his spirit is alive.
Did you know Caricieri v. Salazar is a 2009 case an Indian tribe lost in the U.S. Supreme Court? The Narragansett tribe has been in the state of Rhode Island for centuries and has a rich history. But in the 1880s, the state of Rhode Island attempted to dissolve the tribe. However, the tribe resisted. As a result of the settlement of lawsuits, the state agreed to place some 1,800 acres of land into trust for the tribe, and in 1983 the Narragansett were granted recognition as a tribe by the United States. In 1991, the tribe notified the United States that it wanted to place 31 acres of land into federal trust status to provide housing for tribal elders. Federal trust status means the United States holds title to the land for the benefit of the tribe. The state of Rhode Island fought this action in federal court. Finally, in 2009, the United States Supreme Court said the Narragansetts could not get the land placed into federal trust status because it was not considered to be a recognized tribe prior to the 1934 Indian Reorganization Act. Several tribes expressed outrage that the court seemed to be using a legal technicality to deny the Narragansett a basic right to hold land as other tribes do, denying the long history of the tribe. The National Congress of American Indians and other groups are seeking to overturn this case.
The Caricieri Decision is a complex legal ruling touching upon the issues of sovereignty, Indian gaming, and the placement of tribal lands into trust status. At the most recent National Congress of American Indians annual convention, Native Report asked for an update as to where the issue stands now.
On this fall morning, tribal representatives attending the National Congress of American Indians annual convention received an update on the Caricieri Decision, an important Supreme Court case.
Tribes were provided reservations in a number of states, and on those reservations they held sway. They had the entire reservation all to themselves. But in the late 1880s, Congress decided, no, we have to start allotting these lands to different tribal citizens and allow them allow the citizens to pick out a section, a quarter section of land on their reservation. Now, it didn't affect a lot of tribes in the East Coast, but what it did set a precedent for is for non-Indians to start owning land on the reservations. And as things went along, the tribes that reached some kind of settlement to get a land base again got the land base, but didn't necessarily get all the land that was on that land base held into trust by the United States. The Narragansett tribe in Rhode Island was one of those. Now, the Narragansetts have been around for as long as anybody can remember. As I said, land was taken away from the tribes that was within their original reservations. And so a part of the Indian Reorganization Act passed in 1934 said that the Secretary had the authority to take land into trust for the benefit of Indian tribes. Well, there was some part of that law that said Indian tribes that were in existence or under federal authority in 1934. And so the Supreme Court of the United States said, well, the Narragansett weren't listed as one of the tribes that was under federal authority in 1934, and so therefore the Secretary did not have the authority to take land into trust for the benefit of the Narragansetts. That's the basis of the decision.
This decision has impacted Native nations across Indian country to varying degrees.
We just were recently recognized, and the whole aspect of being able to take land into trust has now been put on hold for our tribe. It took us 32 years to go through the federal recognition process, the FAP process as it's called, and when we finally got there in October of 2010, October 1st, this Caricieri issue has now affected us in ways that we couldn't have imagined at that time. We were under the impression that since we were a newly recognized tribe and they have within that process tribes are allowed to take land into trust as part of what's called new reservation, and we're not able to do that now because of the Caricieri decision. We're considered to be a landless tribe at this point. But for us, we're smack dead in the middle of the Hamptons, outside of the village called Southampton. But our land base at that time went from the East Hampton, what's currently the East Hampton town line now, all the way to the Brookhaven town line, and from shore to shore. That's from Long Island Sound all the way to the Atlantic Ocean.
We live on Cape Cod, very rich, pristine land. It was the last piece of land to be incorporated as a town into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the developers came in and they just ate up the land, and they took a lot of land, and through the Dawes Act, the allotment process, they took land away from our tribe in a very illegal nature. So for us, as a sovereign federal nation, it's important for us to have a tribe to, land for our tribe to provide for housing, for education, for all the other amenities that's important to a sovereign nation to provide self-governance. Section 17 of the Indian Reorganization Act says that tribes can provide free trade zones and all types of business. And what does that mean to America today? Well, Indian tribes have a chance to create economies and help rebuild America and make America special. And we want to be able to do that. And I think legislatively, Congress doesn't really understand self-determination versus extermination.
But is there a way to fix this problem? And who has that authority?
There has been a major effort on the part of many of the tribes, the National Congress of American Indians, all of the intertribal organizations have signed on, to try to get Congress to fix this before it gets worse, and it has been getting worse. And the thought is that anything that Interior were to do to construe the decision in a way that still permits it to do things will still be challenged. There will still be lawsuits. Will still mean 10 years of expense and delay. The cleanest way to do it is if Congress were to act, and to act soon. So that we learned a year ago when we almost got the fix through Congress that the best way to impress upon the members of Congress that this is really important and it's not just limited to a few tribes would be to have not just tribal organizations sign on, but individual tribes. So that if we can present a letter that has pages upon pages of tribal leader signatures, each listing their individual tribe, and say, this matters to us, this matters to us, we think you must fix this because it is creating a new fracture point that is threatening tribal sovereignty in very important ways.
There should be a legislative fix that both the House and the Senate would approve. It would be a clean Caricieri fix saying that, you know, I know they made a ruling on the word now in 1934, they being the Supreme Court, but there should be no now. It should be any tribe, you know, prospective and retrospective of 1934 as a federal recognized tribe. The Secretary of the Interior shall have the opportunity and right to take land into trust for federal recognized tribes. So it would be a legislative fix. I even feel that the President of the United States should step in and do an executive order, perform that and say, you know, listen, these are the first Americans, this is America's people. And it's very important for these tribes to have land into trust so that they can provide housing, healthcare, education, and forms of economic development for our tribe.
We were the only ones that sort of paid the price for playing a major role or spearheading the Pueblo revolt of 1680. When Oñate came in 1692, first thing he did was when he reached the Rio Grande, he asked the Pueblo Indians who started these problems of the Indians revolting against the Spaniards, and everybody pointed north. So by the time he got north, they pointed to Picoris Pueblo, and in return, he brought in a devastating disease, which was smallpox, and we didn't have no immunity to that strange disease, so we were dying like flies left and right. And we have a ceremonies for the person that goes to the happy hunting ground, but we couldn't fulfill those ceremonies simply because we were just dying left and right, so they were just throwing off the bodies off the highest house block there. And today, if you go walking around in that mount where the Pueblos once stood, you can see after a good thunderstorm, you could see human remains sort of sandwiched in on there, you know.
In Part 4 of Barrow Whalers of the North, we learned about the importance of family, friends, and community. Next, in Part 5, we see how whaling is utilized as a teaching tool.
The North Slope Borough School District has recognized the need for the youth to understand and learn their language, especially those who partake in the subsistence lifestyle, and have created a book that not only teaches the youth about subsistence terms and local ocean currents, but does it in both the English and Inupiaq languages.
It's called Agavik Sirunikun. And the concept was developed by Jenna Hacharik, who is the bilingual coordinator for the district. And she came to me wanting the students to know wind directions, current directions, weather terminology, all in Inupiaq. So from her ideas, I then sat down and came up with images, and we kind of bounced ideas back and forth off of each other. And what we came up with was Inupiaq names for the wind directions and current directions, directional terminology, the parts of the harpoon, all in Inupiaq. Terminology for the umiak, for the skin boat, and also of the whale distribution in the communities. You know, which parts of the whale are distributed to whom. And there's also a section for the student to document the lead conditions out on the ice. And this is to, again, bring in their writing skills and their critical thinking skills. There's also a section for the students to write down the stories that they're here, because when you're out on the ice, you're with more experienced whalers who have just some incredible stories to share. And so this is a way for them to use their writing skills and to also, you know, record these stories so they can be remembered and passed on.
One particular story that belongs to a whaling captain, Jonathan Aiken Sr., teaches all those who hear it about the power of prayer. It seems that Mr. Aiken and another hunter were out in their umak one season, perched upon a piece of ice hunting walrus. A lone walrus appeared in front of them, lazily floating by, resting. The other hunter raised his gun, but Jonathan, feeling uneasy about this walrus all by itself, asked the other hunter not to shoot. By that time, the other man had already pulled the trigger, delivering a fatal shot to the walrus. Before the two men could even get out of their umiak, the piece of ice they were sitting on was surrounded by a herd of angry walrus. As the walrus approached the hunters, threatening their well-being, the men shot the beast until they reached the last of their ammunition.
Ammo was around 5 shots left. They couldn't shoot him no more. But and I sit on the boat, on top of the boat, from the boat, and I pray, I need help. But in maybe 15 minutes, the killer fish was coming. One was with a big walrus, big killer whale. We bite it and go up the water. I see the big walrus. But some of them was little ones, 4 of them. But around us it's bloody, in front of us is bloody, all over, and no more walrus.
What happened next is nothing less than a miracle. Testimony to the connections that these Inupiaq people have with their surroundings and with their creator. After the killer whales had chased off the walrus and killed many of the others, the whales then surrounded Jonathan's umiak and guided the two hunters safely away from the ice.
And one killer here was on the front, and and the 2 was in the back, and the 2 was on the side of us. And nobody can touch us yet. Nobody can do it. The walrus can do it. And we go up. I go faster and faster. They were still on the front side and the back.
The killer whales steer the umiak and the hunters towards an approaching boat. As the boats get closer, the whales veer from their sentry positions and disappear into the Chukchi Sea. As for this whale, well, the people are grateful for what they were allowed to get, but the passing ice floe has decided to stay for a while. And that means that these whalers will have to return when the lead goes out.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org and on Facebook. Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors here on Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. See you next time.
Stacy Thunder is a member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation, and Tad Johnson is a member of the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa and is chair for the American Indian Studies Department on the campus of the University of Minnesota Duluth. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.